This photo is of Herman and Gittler Kolski, parents of the late Avraham Kolski, a Jewish Holocaust survivor who was a museum guide here at the Holocaust Centre. The Kolskis lived in Lodz, Poland, where they had 4 children, 3 boys and a daughter. Herman, or Hirsch, was a barber, and by the time the war started, Abraham had followed in his father's footsteps to work in the barber shop too. Gittler managed the household. We also have a nice family snapshot taken in 1938. Abraham is in the middle. His sister Nadia had already left for Palestine. Hirsch looks quite pleased with himself, while Gittler, as she does in most photos, seems more serious. Back to the photo in question. Notice how Gittler and Herman stare intently at the camera. They're not smiling. Where are they? When is the photo taken? And what is that behind them? So as to when was this photo taken, Avraham Kolski indicated that he thought it was taken in November 1939. But when I noticed the Jewish stars on his parents' chests, I started looking in the history books and discovered this. In September 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland and Lodz was soon overrun. They immediately began terrorising the Jews, and in November 1939 a directive came down that Jews were to wear a yellow armband on their right arm about 10 centimetres wide. It was an unusual legislation. 1 month later it was changed. On the 11th of December 1939 an order came for the Jews of Lodz to wear a yellow star on their chest around here and also another one on their back. So this photo must have been taken after 11th of December 1939. As to the location, there is no doubt. They're standing in front of the rubble of the destroyed Wolborska Street Synagogue, which was destroyed in mid-November by the Nazis. So let's hear what Avraham Kolski has to say himself in a testimony recorded here at the Jewish Holocaust Centre in 1995.
The synagogue in Lodz that was on our street, on Wolborska. Wolborska Street 20. My father's shop was in Wolborska Street 16. We were living in Wolborska Street 38, so we were very close to the synagogue. And this synagogue was the oldest and the biggest synagogue in Europe. In 39, before closing the ghetto, they came in. They dynamited. They put in dynamite around the shoe. And they dynamite the shoe in 5 minutes. I've got a picture here. Here in the Holocaust, I've got a picture from the remnants, yes, of the synagogue. My father and my mother standing on. You could find out. I've got it at home too. They standing on the remnants of the shoe on the synagogue with a yellow patch. You got it. I've got this picture from there. And they standing on a piece of cruces, stone of a big debris of the top debris from the synagogue where the Magen David is.
Yes.
And you can see the Magen David there. My parents too.
The Wolborska Street Synagogue was one of many synagogues that were destroyed in Lodz over the course of a few days in mid-November 1939. The Kolski family apparently witnessed its destruction from the roof of their apartment. The Wolborska Street Altschule or Stara Synagogue was the oldest synagogue in Lodz, having replaced a wooden synagogue built at 8 Wolborska Street in 1809. In 1860 to 1863, the synagogue was relocated to Wolborska 20 and replaced with a new stone building designed by architect Jan Karol. Major renovation took place from 1897 to 1900 according to a design by well-known Lodz architect Adolf Seligson. So what was the synagogue like? For For this information, we're grateful to Rabbi Shimon Huber-Band. While incarcerated in Warsaw Ghetto, he joined the secret Oneg Shabbat Ringelblum archive and documented much about the Jewish life in Poland that was being decimated by the Nazis. Before he was murdered in Treblinka in 1942, he wrote numerous pieces, including this description of the interior of the synagogue on Walborska Street. He says, "It was very tall and beautiful. It contained 2 women's galleries. In all, it held 1,500 seats. There were 36 Torah scrolls in the synagogue and a large amount of silver Torah ornaments, including many antique works of art. All official public ceremonies took place in this synagogue." So the synagogue was destroyed in November 1939, and the photo was taken after the 11th of December 1939. But the shell of the destroyed synagogue remained up for a bit longer. In April 1940, the Jews of Lodz were all forcibly relocated into a small ghetto area, the Kolskis among them. So what is interesting is I came across another image of the Jews of Lodz being forcibly moved into the ghetto. This photo was taken in March 1940, and we can see in the background the shell of the Walborska Street synagogue still standing. And here is another fantastic image documenting the destruction of the synagogue taken by Henrik Ross. Henrik was an official photographer in Lodz, but along with the official photos, he secretly took many images capturing the destruction of Jewish life in Lodz. Herman Kolski continued to run a barbershop in the Lodz ghetto while his sons worked in factories. Hirsch was arrested by the criminal police in 1942 and died after release from injuries sustained during his arrest. Avraham, his brothers and mother carried on until they were deported to Auschwitz in 1944. The boys were separated from their mother upon arrival, and it was the last they saw of her. Avraham Kolski still had his 2 brothers, Shmuel and Simek, with him. One thing that helped the Kolski brothers survive was that the Nazis needed barbers to shave them. Just after liberation by the Russian army, the 3 brothers split up in search of food, but at the end of the day, young Simek didn't return. He had been murdered. The 2 brothers returned to their hometown Lodz, and in what remained of their old home on Walborska Street, Avraham chanced upon this photo of his parents at the destroyed synagogue. It served as a most precious reminder of his family. So finally, there's another story that this photo has for us, and it's about the importance of looking after original material from the past. When I was redoing the museum display some years ago, I asked Abraham if I could rescan the photo, which he allowed me to do. I asked him also to consider donating the photo, the original photo, to the museum, but he refused to part with it. He took it with him everywhere, and I understood that. Some years later, I met a family member in the museum, a family member of Avraham Kolski's, and she sadly told me that in the end, Avraham had managed to lose the photo, and I was just so grateful that we have a high-resolution scan of it. So I've answered a lot of questions about the photograph, but some questions remain unanswered. Just who was behind the camera? Who is the photographer? And what was the purpose of the photo being taken? So my guess is that the Kolskis went with this photographer on that day to document just what was happening at that point in time, the labelling of the Jews and the destruction of their culture and religion. And they would never have imagined what was to happen after. This was November or December 1939. But nor could they ever have imagined that this photo would end up doing just what they had possibly intended, which is to tell future generations of what happened back then and what was to come. Thank you for your interest.